I'm here. Welcome back, everybody. I've still got my cold, but I was on a vacation for the last week plus, and was going to do shows, and then I got a cold, and I said, "There's no freaking way I'm doing this show." So anyway, I'm back in Chicago. I still have my cold. It's been a week. It's not COVID, which is nice. I just tested again, but it's still an obnoxious cold. Anyway, and thank you, Laka. I just saw that before I came on. I appreciate that. We're gonna lots of news today. We're gonna start with Ukraine and then do Israel. Let me get TikTok rolling here. It's been 10 days. I've got to like remember how to do this now. Go live. Okay, hopefully this is doing it correctly. It's always kind of freaky when I haven't done this for a while. All right, there's TikTok. Here we go. Switch my mirror. Come on, TikTok. There we go. Switch my mirror. TikTok's being very slow today. That's worrying me a little. Like my computer, my RAM on my iPad is being bad. There we go. Hey, TikTokers. Anyway, hey guys, YouTubers, everybody else. Woo! How are we all? I am back, cold and all. I don't feel too bad, but it's been a real cold I've had. I've been on vacation for a week, but I've also had a cold all week, which is not fun. So welcome all. I'm sipping I had hot tea earlier. Now I'm doing water. Oh boy. Welcome everybody. Thank you. I was in Arizona visiting my nephews, which was very nice. Nice because the weather certainly is nicer, that's for sure. This time of year, Arizona is like 65 to 75 during the day. Thank you for the gift there on TikTok, who is at I Am Ruben. So it was very nice, except that I got a cold like day 3. I was in Phoenix, yep. But day 3, I got a cold. Thank you, Elizabeth. My nephew and I decided we were going to go out and hunt for meteors because it was the big meteor shower happening that week. So Wednesday night, I arrived Monday. Wednesday night, we go and literally we drove up to Flagstaff. There's a really cool observatory there, the sort of historic Lowell Observatory. They had a display and stuff. And then we've got, thank you, Pedro. And then we got Carol, well, for the gifts. We got our cameras and stuff and just went out into the cold from like 9 to midnight. Well, we were already in the cold for the hour and a half before, but an hour and a half standing in, and it was like 25, 27 degrees. Oh, in Fahrenheit. In Celsius, that's probably -4, maybe. Well, when you're standing there for 3 to 4 hours, it's not fun. I was bundled up, but I caught a horrible cold. A lot of stars. Did see a few shootings. We saw a lot of shooting stars, actually. It was very cool. Welcome back, folks. Just telling you guys where I was in Arizona for the week visiting my nephews. Went to see the shooting stars. We did see many of them. Didn't photograph them very well. No, interesting. I will get to the show in a moment. Thank you, Succeed, for the gift. My nephew, just doing the quick hello while we're waiting for folks to join us. If anybody joins on and wonders why we're talking about meteor showers, we usually wait a couple minutes for folks to actually join us. Thank you, James Watson, or Walton. I'm calling you Watson. Walton. But what's interesting is I've got an iPhone 14. My nephew has an iPhone 15. My 14 gave pictures of, and we were doing pictures of the sky with our iPhones, pictures of the sky that were okay. They were nothing. You can see the stars, but not really see the Milky Way or anything. Thank you, adventurers. My nephew with his iPhone 15, ridiculous pictures of the Milky Way, just holding our phones on a tripod. The difference was shocking and very annoying, I must add as well. Anyway, so yes, I caught a cold. We were outside for 4 hours watching the meteor shower. Hangover voice. Literally, I have had a cold for a week, and I just did another COVID test. It's still not COVID, which is good to know. But oh my God, really annoying. But what do you do? But it was nice being out in Arizona. It's actually nice being in different places. Like I hate Washington. Thank you, LWD. This was yet another trip that reinforced for me how much I hate Washington, D.C. I've got to get out of that town. Thank you, Marcy. I'm just really not sure where to move to is the problem. Oh, shit. You're reminding me something. I've got to set myself a reminder here. Hold on a second. Remind me in 2 hours to send Andy a message. There we go. I've got a friend helping me get my Greek citizenship because I am owed the Greek citizenship and the Greeks are being very difficult. So I've got to ask a friend who's going to be helping me. All right. So, hey guys, welcome. I am going to start with an update on the Ukraine war, and then we're going to slip into Israel next, as always. The way the show works is I go through the news for about the first half hour. Well, with both stories there. Thanks, Allie. I saw that was the new gift on TikTok, and I was like, I've got to have that. The new Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer thing. And thank you for the reindeer for the everybody's fine. Thank you, SV, and who had Allie had the reindeer, and Adventurers had the snowman. But any case, we can talk about Greece and my passport in a minute. Thank you, Ellie. But the way it works is I'll go through the news first, and then we'll do your guys' questions. Second half of the show, as always, I very much appreciate your guys' gifts because I do this for free and I do it full time. Other than my first vacation in 10 or 20, I haven't taken a vacation that wasn't a working vacation in, I don't know. I think it's been possibly even 20 years. No, I went to Greece. In Greece, I didn't work like 13 years ago, I think. That may have been the last one I had. Thank you, Ava. So anyway, I'm working now. So your guys' gifts help. So please do keep the gifts coming. Thank you, LWD. Very nice gift. Because I literally, your guys' gifts pay the bills and help me keep doing this. So thank you. Finally, I'll try to do a shout out with all the kind of cool TikTok gifts I see. And if you guys have super chat questions on YouTube, I will always get to a super chat question immediately. I do have I could make a work trip, yeah, but Arizona isn't work though. I mean, I have legitimately, thank you, Carol and Alex. I have legitimately, people are asking about deducting for work trips. I will deduct work trips when they're work trips, but coming to Chicago right now is not a work trip, and going to Arizona was not a work trip. So I like to be very honest with my taxes, just in case someday I do get audited. I can argue the things that I think are real and not have the crazy stuff like going to Arizona for fun and claiming it's for work. Thank you, Martin. All right, guys, let's get rolling here. So, Ukraine, actually, maybe at the end of the show, too, we'll talk about Colorado and Trump a little, because that happened a few days ago, but I was still on vacation, but going like, whoa. Or yesterday, was it yesterday maybe? That Colorado, the state of Colorado in the U.S. Basically took Trump off the ballot for the election. And very interesting. Thank you, Martin and Elizabeth. You know, I shall tell you, in a nutshell, the U.S. Supreme Court can reverse it all. They can do whatever they want. Now, would they normally? Thank you, Mustard and McFadge. That snow's very cool. I was worrying about the snow thing, too. That is very cool. Cindy. Would the Supreme Court do it? A normal Supreme Court might not. A normal Supreme Court might say, you know what? Thank you, Blue Ariel. Might say, we've got to, defer to the states, because typically in America, thank you, Marcy, states have the power to regulate elections, regulate, who's eligible to be a candidate, all this kind of stuff. But the Supreme Court can do what it wants. Typically, they don't, but they already have done it once with this sort of new, more conservative Supreme Court. So could they just say, we want Trump to be on the ballot? Yeah, they could if they want. But so we'll see. All right, let's go on with Ukraine, though. So it is day 633 of Vladimir Putin's special 3-day military operation in Ukraine. U.S. aid, as you guys know, is still in limbo. It's kind of a freaking joke. Boy, I hate to come back to stuff that's like depressing, but guys, this is just a freaking joke where we are right now. I mean, the Biden administration has occasionally peeped up and said stuff, but honestly, they don't, to me, look like they're in any great panic, right? Maybe they're doing stuff. Now, the only thing I can hope and pray is that Biden is doing stuff behind closed doors with the Republicans in Congress, and that's why he's not going as crazy publicly about this issue. But not only are we on the verge of abandoning Ukraine and letting this country get wiped off the map, I mean, literally wiped off the map. That's Putin's goal. I mean, this is one of those where, as I always say, I don't use the word genocide just because I don't like somebody. Same thing with the word fascism. I think, thank you, Cammie, there was certainly a thing on the left with calling everybody a fascist who we didn't like. Thank you, Martin. And just because you don't like them doesn't mean they're a fascist. Just because they're on the right doesn't make them a fascist, right? Thank you, Cindy and Chazak. In this case, this is genocide, what Russia's doing to Ukraine. Thank you, Marie. The International Criminal Court has already put out an arrest warrant for Vladimir Putin because of one of the genocidal acts that Russia is doing, which is kidnapping Ukrainian children. And they're kidnapping them to take them to Russia and basically make them Russians. The idea is to wipe out the next generation of Ukraine's children. That's genocide. It is also genocide when you come out and say that our goal is to basically eliminate this country. The Russians, at least the Russian leadership, believe that Ukraine doesn't exist as a country. I remember at the beginning of the war, I've told you guys this before, but if you don't remember, it just stuck in my head. At the beginning of the war, one of the Russian leaders said something like, the Ukrainians are Russians. They just don't realize it. And it's our job to educate them. We have to educate them to help them understand that they're not Ukrainians. They're Russians. And you're listening to this going, are you insane? Right? So that's what's at risk here. The other thing that's at risk, and this is really a big issue, and honestly, I'm not quite sure why Biden isn't talking about this second issue, more importantly, with regards to Ukraine. China and Taiwan. China's watching. China is learning an important lesson here. the lesson China's about to learn, or frankly has already learned, is if you go to war with the U.S., you got about 2 years before the U.S. gets bored and the U.S. wants to pull back. If the U.S. doesn't win in 2 years, the U.S. is going to go, we don't want to fight anymore, right? I mean, that's pretty much it. Thank you, Lori. The other possibility, too, by the way, the Chinese also could be looking, not only is China learning the lesson here that they maybe should just invade Taiwan, because again, it'll probably take more than 2 years, the war, and the US will drop out because we don't have the stamina for it. The other lesson, if I were China, I'd be asking myself, what is it that made the Republican Party, Donald Trump especially, but the Republicans already had a love affair with the Russians, not when it was the Soviet Union. Republicans used to understand the threat, the threats facing our country, especially Russia. The Republicans, if anything, Republicans understood the Russian threat way more than Democrats did. Democrats were the ones, right? I mean, Bernie Sanders went and had his his honeymoon in the Soviet Union. I mean, it was crazy Democrats who weren't so good on the Russia problem, right? Thank you, Michelle. Now it's Republicans who don't get it. If I were China, I'd be asking myself, what is it that makes Donald Trump so want to be Russia's best friend? Thank you, Lori. What is it that makes Republican members of Congress so want to be Russia's best friend? All the most conservative ones, many of them no longer care about Russia anymore. They no longer care about dictatorship. They no longer care about Russia's threats to Europe. Is it money? I mean, MJ is saying money. Maybe it's money. Maybe it's blackmail. I don't know. But if I were China, the one lesson we've already learned is somehow you can buy Republican support if you're a foreign dictatorship and an enemy of the United States. You can buy their support. I don't know how you buy it, but if I were China, I'd be looking into it. And that's the second lesson we should be taking, and China especially should be taking from Taiwan and Ukraine. What's going on in Ukraine right now is that clearly the Republican Party can be bought on national defense, and that's really scary. It's a mess. I mean, guys, it's bad. It's very bad across the board. Let me keep going here anyway. Zelensky is talking about mobilizing another 450,000 to 500,000 new soldiers. His defense chief had talked about basically drafting Ukrainians that were abroad, illegally abroad. Ukrainian men aren't allowed to leave the country, but a lot of them already were abroad studying things like this. The Minister of Defense came out and said today that he was considering forcing them all to come back. Then I think that the Zelensky administration came out and said, no. I think because they freaked a lot of people out. So that's not happening. But clearly the Ukrainians are worried and planning for a longer war, which they should anyway, and basically mobilizing more people. In terms of what's next, Politico had an interesting article today. Politico is a very good American politics publication in Washington, D.C. And Politico, let me read you a little Politico story today. Via Politico, Ukraine's spies aim to intensify intelligence operations and conduct sabotage strikes deep in Russian-controlled territory over the next year to bring the war as close to the Kremlin as possible. The head of Ukraine's SBU security service, which is their spy service, said. We cannot disclose our plans. They should remain a shocker for the enemy. We prepare surprises, said Major General Malyuk. The occupiers must understand that it will not be possible to hide. We will find the enemy everywhere. Didn't want to give specifics. The article did mention the Black Sea, for example, which means the Kerch. My map is still here. The Kerch Bridge in southern Ukraine that the Ukrainians have hit repeatedly. The Russian fleet in the south. One thing that worries me is, and again, I've talked about this before, but I think we're getting to that point now. If we don't support Ukraine adequately, we have not supported Ukraine adequately to this date. First of all, we haven't. I mean, as I've said before, we have given Ukraine just enough weapons and help so that they didn't collapse, so that Russia didn't win. We never wanted to give Ukraine enough weapons so that Ukraine could win. Thank you, Courtney, because we were afraid of Ukraine taking back Crimea. The rest of the territory that Russia controls, Russia got this last year or two. So the U.S. and France and UK, the U.S., France, and Germany are less worried about that. But Crimea, which is the territory in the south, the Russians stole in 2014, very important territory for Putin, psychologically, in terms of the history and everything else. I think we do not want Ukraine to get that territory back. I mean, unless Russia gives it to them, but certainly not by war. And we've been holding back. What worries me about that is if I were Ukraine, and think about this, I mean, if you're any country, right? If you're Ukraine and you're worried about losing your country, and in this case, quite literally, as I've already said, we know the Russians are dead set on committing genocide in Ukraine. The International Criminal Court has accused the Russians of doing this, right? By stealing Ukrainian children and trying to turn them into Russians, basically taking them and brainwashing them and giving them away to Russians. We know that the Russians do not believe Ukraine should exist as an independent state. They don't believe Ukraine does exist as a nationality. They think they're confused Russians. So if you're Ukrainian, and again, apply this to any of your countries, guys. If you're Ukrainian and you know that Western support is getting iffy now, and you know that if the Russians take over, they're going to steal your children, they're going to kill the Russian plan coming into the war. The Russian plan coming into the war was to kill several million Ukrainians off the top. It was the leadership, the political leadership, Zelensky, of course, members of the parliament who don't like, aren't in favor of the invasion. They were going to go after cultural leaders. So, singers, authors, artists, anybody who, again, commands the intellectual intellectual bandwidth of the country or whatever, right? But also they have an audience. So they're not just the intellectuals, but they have an audience, right? People that are singers or soccer players or whatever, right? They were going to kill all of them, and they were going to kill all the activists, all the NGOs, all the nonprofits, all the charity people, all the political activists, kill them all. If that's what's in store for your country, right? Especially stealing your children. If that's what's in store for your country, what wouldn't you do if you were Ukrainian right now and the West were starting to pull their aid? And I've talked about this before. I've said that my concern has been that if we get to the point where the West is no longer supporting Ukraine, first of all, we weren't supporting them enough anyway, to put that aside, that the West wasn't even giving Ukraine the support we were giving. We started to pull our support. And I were Ukraine, I would imagine, thank you, adventurers, that Ukraine might start doing things that we, for example, would call terrorism, right? I'm not sure I would quite call it terrorism in this situation, but that's the kind of thing that if literally your country is going to get wiped off the map, right? I always like to give the example of America. In the 1980s, there were lots of TV shows like this, Red Dawn and other things, where the Russians are invading and taking over America. The Soviets are invading America. As an American, if the Soviets invaded, or the communist Chinese, and they planned on taking over our country and literally wiping us out, stealing our children, guys. Thank you, Crazy American. And wiping us out as a country. There is nothing we wouldn't do in response, right? We wouldn't sit there and say, well, that would be considered terrorism if we did that to them. So we'd much rather just let the Chinese literally wipe America off the map than commit something that some people might cause terrorism, right? Bullshit. We would do it. We would do the terrorism. And I don't say I fear. I don't know what word to use exactly for this, but I think that will be what happens in the end here if we cut off Ukraine and things start to go really south, is that the Ukrainians aren't going to have a choice. And the Ukrainians are damn good, by the way. They're not going to have a choice but to basically go full Mossad. I mean, because they're proving themselves to be sort of in the footsteps of the Israeli sort of secret police who are brilliant. Anyways, let's see, but it worries me. I don't accept requests from strangers. Sorry, guy. Sorry. Someone wants me to go live with them for 2 minutes. I don't do that with people I don't know. No offense. But there's lots of crazy people out there. I can't really accept somebody I don't know. Thank you, Sean. Let me keep going here. Ukraine says it's going to produce 1 million first-person view drones next year. Strategic Industries Minister says more than 11,000 medium and long-range drones will also be made. That's good. The question is whether they're enough, because the Russians have been building now a massive number of drones. The Russians are getting pretty far ahead of Ukraine in terms of the number of drones they're able to produce now. So that's a concern. Japan did some good stuff today. At least there's a report out of the Washington Post that Japan is expected this week to formalize a change in policy that will enable it to export several dozen American Patriot missiles back to the United States. The idea here is that we've given Ukraine a few Patriot missile batteries, right? The actual whole system. And Ukraine could use more. Now, the thing I don't know is, well, what the article is saying is that if Japan goes ahead and is able to give us back several of our Patriot missiles, then we would have those available. Thank you, Dadike. Very nice. Thank you very much for the gift. Then we would have more missiles to give Ukraine, right? Because we get them back from Japan, we give them to Ukraine. So that's very cool. What I didn't understand from the article was it wasn't entirely clear whether Japan is giving us Patriot missiles or Patriot missile batteries or both, because there's the missiles, but then there's the entire system that goes with the missile, the radar, for how you track it and everything else. Those would be really important. Thank you, Triff. Those would be really important. So either way, this is still good from Japan. So thank you, Japan. Ukraine claims to have downed more than 3/4 of the combat drones launched by Russia since September of last year, but they have only knocked down about 20% of the missiles that Russia has shot. So again, interesting sort of the dichotomy there. The Ukrainians are pretty good at shooting down the drones, not good at shooting down the missiles. And still 25% of the drones can still do some good damage. Thank you, Addie, for the snowman gift on TikTok. I don't know who that person is, Viking. You'd have to kind of fill me in on that one. Viking on YouTube. What else we got here? Hey, Andy. I know I've been on vacation and then sick for the last 8-9 days. Germany announced 88.5 million euros in winter aid for Ukraine. Thank you, Mustard. I will get more. I saw your note. I will get more auctions up probably tomorrow. I've still got to pack your guys' stuff to get mailed out tomorrow. Finland has announced another $116 million in aid for Ukraine. Hungarian Prime Minister Orban, he's such a jerk. This guy is such an idiot. So Hungary, one of the European countries, thank you, Jonas, near Ukraine, run by a guy who, honestly, I think wishes he were a Soviet dictator. The Soviet Union, run by Russia, basically, controlled Ukraine, and literally ate Ukraine, Latvia, Lithuania, stolen Estonia, a number of countries that they just took up and made them part of the Soviet Union illegally, basically. The other thing the Soviet Union did was they took over Eastern Europe, and the country stayed independent, like East Germany and Czechoslovakia, but they weren't. They set up communist dictatorships. Hey, Ash, we'll see you later. They set up communist dictatorships in those countries of Eastern Europe. And one of the places that had a communist dictator, and they were horrifically brutal communist. We're talking something out of 1984. What these dictatorships were. Horrific. Well, one of them was in Hungary. And this Orban guy, who's the prime minister of Hungary, really strikes me a lot as a wannabe communist dictatorship. This guy's a pig. He's pro-Russian. He's pro-Putin. He's anti-Ukraine. He's anti-NATO. He's anti-EU. Orban wants to be a communist dictator, bottom line, or a fascist dictator, whichever. It's bad. He's also a big favorite of the Republican Party here in the U.S., which is, again, makes no sense whatsoever, but he is. Typically, the Republican Party would understand they would not like somebody like this. Well, Orban comes out today and claims that the war in Ukraine isn't really a war. Mind you, who does he sound like? Vladimir Putin. Remember? Vladimir Putin is the one that says special military operation. It's not a war. He says there was no declaration of war between the two countries. When Russia declares war, then there will be a war. He goes on to say he describes the invasion as a military operation, literally using Putin's language. Okay. Now, again, this guy's an idiot. I don't know what he's quite up to. Oh, thank you, Sean. I'd never seen. Oh, that's really cute. TikTok has some new cute gifts. It was a gingerbread man party, like in a chocolate. I assume it was a hot cocoa mug. That was really cute. Thank you for that. I really don't understand what he's up to. I don't understand what he's up to. He's owned by Putin. That's the thing. Why and how? But Europe needs to, I think, get wise to this guy. The European Union and NATO both have got at least provisions to freeze them out, take away their voting rights of Hungary until they want to basically be better members. Thank you, Eva. But keep in mind, Hungary, along with Turkey, Hungary is one of the two countries with Turkey that's keeping Sweden from joining NATO right now, too. Anyway, final Ukraine story, and then we'll do some Israel news, too. This is from the Kyiv Post. So there is a draft law, medical marijuana law, that may have been passed in Kyiv, in Ukraine. Now, I'm reading a couple different stories on this. The Kyiv Post, the local paper, made it sound like it's not a done deal yet. The Associated Press said, yes, it is a done deal. And the law was passed and it will go into effect in 6 months. Now, what the law does is it makes marijuana available for scientific research or cannabis, I should say, available for scientific research for medical purposes. Specifically, of course, we know about cancer and it helps people with cancer with their pain. We know also that it can help people with PTSD, post-traumatic stress. Thank you, Dawn. And that's obviously a big deal for soldiers in war. So that's the reason they're doing this. But depends who you talk to as to whether this is a done deal or not. But the Associated Press is saying it's a done deal, and that basically in 6 months it's going to be now not legalized for recreational use, but it will be legalized for medical use, which I think is a very good thing. All right, let's switch over to Israel, guys. Oh, thank you for the fireworks there. You can tell I'm going a little slower today because I've still got my cold. It's just like, this has been a week now of this damn cold, and I'm just like, and it's not COVID. I've tested a few times, but oh my God, I'm exhausted. It's okay. Yeah, Israel, get ready, mods. Exactly what Coach Brandon Moore said. Let's start Israel and Gaza now. All right, guys. Oh, and please do keep the gifts coming. You know that on TikTok and YouTube. I appreciate them, guys. They help me pay the bills and keep doing this. So please do keep them coming. All right, let's do this. So White House today. Oh, thank you, Annie. That's an oldie but a goodie. Thank you, Bob and Serg. The White House today is basically continuing to put pressure on Israel to try to maybe get a cold for 2 months. Let's hope that's not happening with me, Barbie. The White House is putting pressure on Israel to basically move to the next stage of the war. The stop the bombing a lot of things stage and move to the much more precise, pinprick kind of attacks. They're saying it again publicly, which is interesting and probably bad news in a way, in the sense that when countries when countries say things about their allies publicly that are negative, it means that the ally isn't coming along for the ride and the ally isn't agreeing with you, and you feel the need to say it publicly. Okay, so that's why the U.S. again continues to put pressure on Israel, because it sounds like Israel isn't really listening to the U.S. about moving to this next phase where there's less big bombing. Thank you, Jonathan. Less big bombing and more precise bombing. Another thing the U.S. said today that I thought was interesting, and it's a fair point. I mean, and again, I'm going to say both are fair points. It's a fair point to put pressure on Israel and say, okay, let's see if we can move to a more, precise bombing now. Okay, but listen to this. Blinken, our Secretary of State, called out other countries for refusing to call on Hamas to surrender. Now listen to this. Quote, "What is striking to me is that even as, again, we hear many countries urging the end to this conflict, which we would all like to see, I hear virtually no one demanding of Hamas that it stop hiding behind civilians," in other words, using civilians as human shields, that it lay down its arms, that it surrender. This is over tomorrow if Hamas does that. This would have been over a month ago, 6 weeks ago, if Hamas had done that, Blinken said. Now, let me see. How can it be that there are no demands made of the aggressor and only demands made of the victim? And this is something that, again, I've had a week. You can get mad at me. I don't care. But the immediate conflict right now is happening because Hamas invaded Israel on October 7th. They had a ceasefire. Thank you, Maddie. They had a ceasefire. There was no justification for breaking the ceasefire. Hamas broke the ceasefire. Now, again, fair enough if you want to argue that you don't like the way Israel's responding, that they're using too much force, whatever. Fair enough. But wouldn't it make sense that if one guy attacks another and he's the belligerent because he broke the ceasefire, you wouldn't just tell the guy fighting back, hey, stop it? You'd tell the guy who started the fight to stop it too. If you were a parent, you'd tell both to stop it. We're not telling Hamas to stop it. And I think it's weird that we're not. And it's a fair point to bring up. And it's something, again, I would hope everyone who's normal out there, not the crazies, would agree that maybe it's good to call on both sides, especially when one side is a terrorist group who started the whole thing. And mind you guys, they're a terrorist group. Right? People aren't calling on individual Palestinians to give up their families or something. They're calling on the terrorist group that started the battle and is holding the hostages to stop. If Hamas surrendered, if Hamas turned over the hostages and surrendered, and this battle would be over. Israel wants to demilitarize Hamas, demilitarize Gaza. That could happen in one day if Hamas gave up. But no one's even calling for it. Why? And again, because we don't think Hamas would do it. Okay, then let's apply the same standard to Israel. If you don't think Israel's going to give up, then let's stop calling on them for either. Right? If we're not going to criticize Hamas because they would never agree, then let's not criticize Israel because they would never agree. There is some kind of weird bias involved here in terms of who people are upset with. And again, it's fine to be upset with Israel, right? You don't like the bombing Israel's doing. You don't like the deaths. Absolutely. Totally legit. But why aren't you upset about Hamas? Right? Why aren't you upset about them doing this to the Palestinian people? Especially, I will go one step further, especially if you think that Hamas really isn't the Palestinian people, right? We hear that a lot. If you think they're not representative of the Palestinian people, then you should be pissed at them because they're basically a terrorist dictatorship putting these people's lives at risk, right? You should hate them as much as we hated Saddam Hussein. Doesn't mean you invade against Saddam Hussein, right? What George Bush did, but you should certainly hate them as much as you do. I'm not sensing a lot of hate for Hamas. I'm really not. I mean, and it is as much as, sorry, my lips are dry, as much as people sort of, like I said, like to sort of claim, oh, we don't defend Hamas. You also don't attack Hamas very much. And I find it just very strange. In any case, the CNN reports say, oh, no, I know Hamas turned down a new Israeli ceasefire proposal. Israel pretty much offered the same proposal last time that they would exchange the hostages and stuff. Hamas said no. By the way, here's another point of why people aren't criticizing Hamas. Israel offered pretty much the same deal as last time. Thank you, Lizard, for the reindeer. Pretty much the same deal as last time for a ceasefire. Hamas said no. What does Hamas want? Hamas said, we're not going to release any more hostages until Israel just calls off the war entirely and says it's over. Thank you, Vicky. Now, interesting position for the guy who started the war, Hamas, right? There were two ceasefires. There was a ceasefire on October 6th. Hamas violated on October 7th. There was a ceasefire a couple weeks ago. Hamas violated again. That's where the war started again a couple weeks ago. And for them to say, nope, no more ceasefires until Israel just quits and says, okay. I mean, shouldn't we be criticizing Hamas for that? Not seeing it. That's all I'm saying, guys, that this kind of stuff isn't going to get settled until we start sort of being kind of fair all around. In any case, CNN reports, this is a little bit of good news. CNN reports that Israel and Cyprus have come a step closer to agreeing on the creation of a maritime corridor that would allow goods to bypass Israel on the way to Gaza. The maritime corridor would allow the direct transfer of humanitarian aid goods to the Gaza Strip. That's good. And finally, there's another poll about Palestinians' impressions of Hamas on October 7th. This was very interesting to me. Unfortunately, it is consistent with all the other polls. Thank you, Vicky. And at this point, I think this might be the fourth poll so far. Thank you, Logan. Appreciate that. This might be the fourth poll so far. And the poll has the same results. And at this point, fourth poll in a row with the same results. Listen to this. It's a Palestinian polling center. Palestinian Center for Policy and Survey Research, thank you, Western, for the hearts, has published the findings of its latest survey into Palestinian attitudes on the war. It found 72% of all respondents, these are Palestinians in the West Bank and Gaza, 72% of all respondents believe Hamas's decision to launch its attack on Israel on October 7th was correct. Only 22% said it was incorrect. That's the first problem for Palestinians. That number is consistent. It has always been around 70, 72, 75%. This is showing 72. So around the same ballpark of Palestinians who say it was a correct thing for Hamas to invade Israel on October 7th, when, of course, they committed all the terrorism and all the carnage. What the people who did the survey did, however, they turned around in the article I read and they said, but the numbers show that even though they agreed with the invasion, they didn't agree with the terrorism that Hamas committed that day. And I thought, well, that's kind of interesting. Like, I'd like to see that data. That's the kind of nuance I like, right? So I clicked through and read more about the study. Let me tell you the data that the study is using to claim that Palestinians they liked Hamas's invasion, but they didn't like Hamas's terrorism. It's total BS by the numbers. Hey, thank you, Vicky. Listen to this. Almost 80% of Palestinian respondents told the Palestinian Center for Policy and Survey Research that killing women and children in their homes is a war crime. That's good, right? 80% of Palestinians in Gaza and the West Bank said killing women and children in their homes is a war crime. Good, right? Very good. An even higher number, 85%, thank you, Vicki, 85% of respondents said they had not watched news videos shown by international news outlets of acts committed by Hamas on October 7th. So 80% said killing women and children in their homes is a war crime. 85% said we never watched the videos on international news of what actually happened on October 7th, so we don't know what happened on October 7th. And finally, therefore, same survey, only 10% of Palestinian respondents surveyed said they believe Hamas had committed war crimes that day. So just to reiterate, 72% of Palestinians support October 7th. 80% of Palestinians say they do not support war crimes. And if you attacked women and children in their homes in Israel, that would be a war crime. And they would not support it, which Hamas did, of course. We know that. 85% say, but the good news is Hamas didn't commit war. No, I shouldn't say didn't commit. 90% basically say Hamas didn't commit war crimes because the Palestinians didn't bother watching any of the news. And that figure alone kind of gets me. You've been this has been 2 months of this going on, and you haven't watched any news. I mean, I realize the power's out now, but when it happened, you didn't watch the news. You don't want to know why Israel's bombing the hell out of you. I mean, this pisses me off, guys. And again, I will end where I always start these shows. There are no clean hands in this battle. Both sides have got dirty hands. Both sides have got unclean hands. It is a legal term which is used to suggest that both parties share some of the blame. It's kind of like a divorce, where very often, it's not always, but very often both sides share some of the blame. This is not great for the Palestinians. And it's just not great. I'll leave it there. Anyway, all right. That is it for the news today. That went 40 minutes. We can do our questions as both sides are definitely locked in a vicious cycle, as Turtle said, and it's just never going to get better. Never going to get better. So what do you do? Let's do Q&A, guys. I'm not sure which New York Times article about the hospital you mean, Nelson. Don't spam. You wrote it. I see it, but I don't know which article you mean. So, anyway, what else is going on, guys? We can talk about this. We can talk about Ukraine. We can talk about politics. Anything you want. I'm still really tired, though, from my damn cold. It's driving me bonkers. Okay, or tell me what it is. I may have seen it. I just don't recall hospital in New York Times. The baby hostage. I mean, the baby hostage is still dead from what we know. There's been no evidence to the contrary. So I'm telling you, Man in the High Castle is amazing. I know, Ryan, I even rewatched it again recently and went through the whole thing in I don't know how much time. It was amazing. Well, thanks, Jens, for pointing that out. Man in the High Castle is an amazing show. Arizona was very nice. I just went to Arizona for about 9 days to see my nephews who are living there, who moved out there as adults. Very nice. Interesting. Oh, thank you, Soren, for the super sticker. One thing I'll say, I didn't find people to be very nice in Phoenix, and that surprised me. I kind of imagined a warmer part of the country that's kind of calmer, more West Coast. I didn't find people to be very friendly, which it just surprised me. Like hiking around, especially hiking. We're hiking, and you run into people. And a lot of them, it was almost like East Coast, kind of where let's not talk to the person on. Okay, women, fine, but guys, let's not talk to the people on the hiking path. You're like, come on, guys, Anyway, but I get the attraction of the weather, that I get very much so. I liked Phoenix though. I thought Phoenix was pretty. The surrounding area was nice. We went to Flagstaff and Sedona. We almost went to the Grand Canyon, but it was just too much of a drive. But it was fun. It was fun. So. A Russian delegation landed in Washington last week. That's interesting. I mean, look, it's never a problem to have the Russians and the Americans talk. I mean, if you want to meet the nice people, go to Tucson. That may be the case. Yeah. Fair enough. Thank you, 863. Oh, Lori, you got the bicycle. You bought the bicycle for the hospice. Okay. I'm going to launch Signal and send him a message. He's probably in sleep right now, but that's one. He had told me he had told me you guys were doing something. Hold on, I'm going to quick note. We're raising, remember folks, we raised money for a children's hospice. Lori says, oops, she bought the bicycle for the hospice. Okay, and I assume you're dealing with him otherwise, right? So he'll know that. That's great, Lori. Thank you. We raised money. I asked him actually what the latest was, and he says they're still pulling it together, but we raised money to get gifts and sweets for children for Christmas at a children's hospice in Ukraine. And you guys were great. Vlad and I held a special morning telethon, and we raised like $2,000 just that 1 hour in the morning. It was amazing. Thank you guys so much for that. Maybe Friday morning, maybe I don't remember when it was, about a week ago, but it was great. Thank you, Shane. But they were talking about getting a exercise bicycle for the children in the hospice, and they needed $300. And Vlad, sort of conspiring with a bunch of you, were thinking, hey, what if we can buy a used one or find a used one? So Lori apparently bought a used one, or bought one at least. I'm guessing, are you one of the folks that's in the UK, Lori? I don't remember. You might be. I remember somebody in the UK was looking at it. I know we have a number of you in Europe who are helpful with all this stuff. Anyway, so thank you for that. That's great, Lori. Yeah, reach out to Vlad directly. I assume you've got his contact. Tucson's full of old people, college-age people, lots and lots of Mexicans, some of whom create the best Mexican food. The food wasn't great in Phoenix either, which surprised me. I had kind of bad Mexican in Phoenix. I was very disappointed. I was like, hello, James Walton said, if Trump is found to have immunity, the D.C. case and the Colorado case will be overturned. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, that's a whole other issue out there. Red Cross not visiting the hostages. Yeah, Rachel raises the issue where up until now, the Red Cross has still not visited the hostages that Hamas is holding. Hamas is holding, what's the number now? Is it 160 or 140 or something that Hamas still has? Or no, was it 140 down to 137, something like that? But it's ridiculous. I mean, it's ridiculous. You've got to let the Red Cross at least visit the hostages. They won't let them. And once again, I would say, when's the last time you heard anybody even mention the fact that Hamas wasn't letting the Red Cross just visit the hostages to make sure they're okay? Oh, thank you, Lori. Oh, good. Thank you so much, Lori. Very nice of you. But right, like when's the last time that anybody even mentioned that Hamas isn't letting them visit? You haven't, because we don't talk about Hamas much. What do you do? Anyway, Finland opened its border for about 12 hours and had to shut it again because the Russians are flooding with immigrants. I'm sure they are. The Russians are horrible. Finland had to shut its border with Russia like now, maybe 10 days ago, because, as was pointed out there, the Russians have been, who was that actually? That was Pedro. The Russians have been basically taking migrants or immigrants from the Middle East, among other, North Africa too, I think, and just like shoving them at Finland and pushing them across the Finnish border because they know that immigration from the Middle East and North Africa is a political issue in European countries, right? So the Russians are basically using these guys as little human bombs or something. I mean, it's really disgusting. Taking immigrants and just throwing them across the border into Finland. So the Finns had to cut the border. They opened it up again, and Pedro says, and they had to shut it off again because the Russians are up to their same old tricks. Anyway, Scottsdale. I was staying in Scottsdale. Yeah, I saw Scottsdale. That's where they live. I know we're talking about it. Ryan's talking about the U.S. going after the Houthis directly. So basically, you've got some people who control like half of Yemen. I think they probably control the south of Yemen. I know they control the capital, Sana'a, but I think it's the south as well. And they have been firing, drones, but also they got cruise missiles, which is crazy, at Israel, but also at ships in the area, possibly U.S. ships, commercial ships, a number of, this is like by the Red Sea. So I have to print off my maps for you people. Oh, let me see. I can at least pull up a map on my phone to show you. I hate sort of doing this without a map. Let me see, Red Sea. Let's see, Google Maps kind of suck for illustrating stuff. I wish it were better. Actually, this isn't terrible. Okay. I'll show these guys first, then I'll show you guys. So the Red Sea is the dot there. Israel's up over here Okay, Saudi Arabia, Yemen, Egypt. So, and then you get over here and you've got the Persian Gulf, right? Iran, Saudi oil. So all the oils come in here. You've got a huge amount of trade that goes through the Red Sea, because what does the Red Sea do? The Red Sea connects the Mediterranean to the Indian Ocean, I guess, over here, right? Huge. Otherwise, you go all the way around. So huge. Sorry, show you guys too. Hugely important. Oop, lower my. There we go. Oops. So there's the Red Sea. Zoom in. There's the Red Sea for you guys. So it's that body of water going up and down by the red. That's how you connect the Mediterranean to the Indian Ocean. And the Houthis, who are this sort of rebel group running part of Yemen, have been attacking ships. And as a result, they are scaring away commercial shipping. A lot of the commercial shippers are saying they're not going to ship. This could impact oil as well. And the U.S. is trying to figure out what to do in terms of beefing up its support, defense of the ships, but also possibly going after the Houthis directly in Yemen. So very, very wild. Very wild. Oh, what else we got, guys? Oh, boy. Oh, yeah, the Russians are taking from wherever they can get the migrants, for sure, for sure. Let me see here. Oh, nothing's going to happen. Sorry. Matt was asking, what do I think on the candidate in Russia looking to stand against Putin? Do you think it's potentially a Russian PR exercise? Well, there's a couple things going on. A few people want to run against Putin next year in the 2024 presidential elections in Russia, one of which is Alexei Navalny, who's an opposition leader who Putin put in jail because he's an opposition leader and who's been missing. Did they ever find? I've been on vacation the last couple of days. He's been missing like for a week and a half, a week and a half to 2 weeks now. So Putin's not going to let him run against him. One of the other people wanting to run against Putin is this Russian military blogger, the lunatic, Igor Girkin, who claims he wants to run against Putin. Putin's not, I mean, it's just, he's a joke. He's an absolute joke. I mean, in the end, Russia is, I get on my dog, Russia is not a democracy. Putin will just kill anybody who's a threat to him. Right? He'll fall out a window. He'll, as somebody, Christine just said, look what they did to what's his face. Oh, excuse me. Oh, my cold is kicking in now. What they did to Prigozhin, who was the head of the Wagner group. Putin just blew him up. Just shot his plane out of the air. So yeah, Putin's not gonna. I don't think it matters who's running against. Putin's gonna find a reason to throw them in jail or kill them. I think at this point. I think. Israel donating a large ocean-going craft to the Philippines. I'm not up on that. I'm not up on why they would do that either. I don't know. A young lady who wants to run for president of the USSR? Oh, who knows? In the USSR, what do you mean? There is no USSR, remember? Officially. At least officially. What else we got, guys? Oh, I'm sorry, because I'm often tired. Today I had tea. Today I'm tired because I've had a cold for like 8 days and I'm just exhausted. And my dog sleeping with me in a small little bed. And like, I think she's not feeling well because all night she kept moving. And it's like, I assume those of you with children have the same thing. If the kid's in bed with you and they're moving all night, you're waking up and making sure they're okay. It was just crazy. Do you think a civil war would ever happen? I think some crazy people are trying to provoke one. Yes. I think Trump's trying to provoke one. I think a lot of the crazy Trump followers are trying to provoke a civil war. Yeah. But going from some crazies committing acts of terrorism to an actual civil war is a big step. So far, the good guys control the U.S. military. And as a friend had said to me a while back, I wouldn't want to be trying to, foment an insurrection against the people who have the drones, But the crazy, who knows? You get some crazy taking over a Republican state and deciding to secede. I mean, who knows? Well, and the problem with the Civil War aspect is, again, the word Civil War, we think in America of the one Civil War we had, right? Back in the 1860s, right? Part of the country says they want to secede from the other. What if it's something like, what do you think would have happened last time if Donald Trump got away with stealing the election? If Donald Trump got away with violently, thank you, Bonnie, violently stopping Congress from counting the votes and he scared Mike Pence and everybody into saying, Biden's votes were fake. We're giving the election to Trump, and Trump just saying, I'm not leaving. If Trump said he wasn't going to leave the White House, under the U.S. Constitution, the president has to leave the White House on January 20th at noon, the month of the year after the election. So the election is always in the fall, in November, and then it's a 4-year term for president. It's in November, and then 3 months later, November 20th at noon, his term ends, the new person's term starts. Trump's plan, another thing was, Trump admitted, or his people admitted, Trump's plan was not to leave. He just wasn't going to leave. He was just not going to leave the White House. Then what do? Then that is a coup. That is a civil war. Right there, you've got a civil war right there. Because if one political party literally isn't willing to give up power, then we've had a coup. And then you're going to have violence. And there is he tried to do it last time. He's going to try it again. So could we have a civil war? Again, I guess the easier word to use is mass violence. Could we have mass violence with our election? Yes, because Donald Trump is calling for it. And too many people support Trump still. So it's really bad. We would have needed a SWAT team. That's the whole problem. You would have needed a SWAT team to enter the White House, and Democrats being Democrats would never do that. Democrats would want to be nice, so they'd want to negotiate with Trump to get him to leave. Whereas actually he would have been an invader in the White House, and under normal conditions, you'd be tackled. But, no, it's very dangerous. It's very dangerous. What else we got, guys? Interesting. Mike says there was some news in Germany that some new Russian citizens in St. Petersburg got their draft papers for the military right at the end of the ceremony where they received their Russian passports. So the Russians granted new citizenship to immigrants and finished the ceremony granting their citizenship and said, "Welcome, you are now Russian citizens. Here are your draft papers to go to Ukraine and fight." Well, you know what? I mean, at this point, if you want to become a citizen of Russia, you know what you're getting. Give me a break. Whatever. What else, guys? I'm sorry. I have my cold here. I'm still yawning from my cold. Well, that's correct too. Stooge is saying what really scares me is the possibility that something like what Trump tried last time happens when we don't have military leadership with such great integrity. Trump has made clear. You can read it. It's been all over the news. Trump made clear that if he wins presidency again, he's going to make sure that he doesn't have any of the weak people. Mind you, Trump's big argument is everybody Trump put in power was a very bad person. Trump's entire team were very bad people. The lawyers were bad. The head of the military was bad, which, mind you, Trump put a very bad head of the military. That means we had a very bad military protecting us for the last 4 years. That's not good. Trump admits that he put a very bad person as the head of the FBI, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the head of the Department of Justice. So in other words, the people who try to keep us safe abroad, Trump put very bad people in charge of, Trump says. For the people who keep us safe at home, Trump put very bad people in charge of. Trump admits that literally every job he hired somebody for, he did a crappy job hiring people. It upsets Trump supporters to hear this because it's the truth. And there's literally no proper, if it upsets you, I ask you to go sit back and think what upsets you about it, because it's 100% true. Go look at it. Trump says everybody he hired was horrible. Next time, which is what the person's asking, Trump says, and by the way, we're going to be talking more about the election as we get towards next year, because it's obviously the big issue in the U.S. But Trump is now saying that I picked so many bad people for my government last time. The next time I'm going to make sure I pick the people who do what I say and basically don't pay attention to the law. They don't pay attention to the Constitution, because Trump was most upset that the people he chose didn't support him in the insurrection. And he is going to pick people who will support him. I guarantee you, he's going to try to pick people for the military who, like the crazy people, like General Flynn, who are literally batshit crazy people like Flynn. He already tried to pick a crazy person last time for the CIA. The tops of the CIA told him we're going to quit. And it stopped Trump from doing it when he was president last. At the very end, he wanted a CIA chief because he wanted to somehow use the CIA for what was going on domestically. He tried to pick a crazy person to run the Department of Justice. Remember that crazy lawyer who was helping him with the coup attempt? He was going to put him in as the new attorney general, and everybody else, again, at the Department of Justice said they were going to quit. So Trump finally got scared and didn't do it. That's what's really scary next time, is this time the military stood up to him. The Department of Justice finally stood up to him. Next time, will they? No. I'm telling you, we are going to have violence in this country if he does what he's talking about doing, because then he's not going to be a legitimately elected president. And if that happens, we no longer have. Yeah, William Barr, that's the irony. Shania Point says William Barr, that William Barr, who couldn't have been a bigger sycophant to Donald Trump, Trump now says betrayed him. William Barr. I mean, it's insane. It's absolutely insane. Well, all I can say is if you claim to care about the Constitution, start looking at the history of the Republican Party and start looking at the history of the Constitution and stop listening to Donald Trump, because you don't care about the Constitution if you're defending Donald Trump. You really don't. I mean, sorry. At some point, even with me doing a show like this, I can't play games. I'm not a fan of Joe Biden at all, Clarissa, but Joe Biden's old. Donald Trump is like violently trying to overthrow my government and end democracy in America, versus Joe Biden's 80 years old. I don't like that Joe Biden's 80 years old. I don't like that he walks like an old man. I actually dislike even more the fact that Donald Trump tried to violently overthrow my government and says he's going to do it again. That bothers me more. Inflation bothered me when we had inflation. We don't anymore if you bothered looking into it. The economy is growing greater than it has in decades. So that's good. There's really nothing wrong with the economy anymore. Oh, and interest rates. The Federal Reserve announced that interest rates are no longer going up, and next year they're going to lower them 3 times. So even with the economy is going good. Bottom line is, a bunch of people don't like Joe Biden because he's old. That's it. And the irony is, too, you don't like the guy who's old, but you're okay with the guy who's crazy and tried to overthrow our country. And is everything you can say about Biden other than old, although Trump's old too, is 10 times worse with, it's not even 10, 100 times worse with Trump, right? I mean, my favorite was this weekend reading an article about the young American children who aren't going to vote for Biden because they're very upset. And they say they're thinking of voting for Trump instead because they're very upset at Biden's position on Gaza and Israel. So they're thinking Trump is the guy who's going to help them. How much of a freaking idiot are you if you didn't even do your research and you think Donald Trump is going to be harder on Israel and more in favor of the Palestinians and the Hamas terrorist group than Joe Biden? You're an idiot if you believe that. You're an absolute blithering idiot. But these kids are now saying this. It was to the New York Times or something this weekend I read, and I was going, oh my God, we're going to vote for Donald Trump. Well, good luck with that. If you think you're helping the Palestinians, you wait and see what happens if a Republican gets in charge, because they're 100 times worse on this stuff. 100 times worse. They're not going to give a damn. And they're not going to give a damn of Israel killing anybody. Not only are they not going to give a damn about Israel killing anybody, they're not going to give a damn about your protests. Joe Biden at least is worried about your protests. Donald Trump? Donald Trump's going to call up the National Guard and throw you in jail. Yeah, there'd be nothing left of Gaza, as Stu said, if Trump were president. Yeah, I mean, it's whatever. I get annoyed in politics sometimes. I really do. How much are you getting paid? I'm not getting paid enough. I actually get paid by you guys, which is why I always remind you, please keep the gifts coming on TikTok and YouTube, because I do this full time. And the way I'm paid, that I basically am able to pay my bills, is all the gifts you guys do. So please do keep them coming. So there. I always love when people pull that line on how much you're being paid. Not enough. So, and also click the likes. I always forget that the likes don't hurt either. Thank you, Dawn. Christmas carousel. I didn't look at all the Christmas gifts. I wish they would give. TikTok doesn't do enough Christmas gifts early on, though. They should have had those from the beginning of the month. You know what I mean? Because like after Christmas, they don't apply, but they waited until like a week before Christmas. It's crazy. Silly. Anyway. What else is going on? It's 6 o'clock. I'm not going to go too much longer because, like I said, I've still got this cold and I'm just exhausted. But hey, Blaze, welcome back. Yep, sorry, I was gone on vacation, so it was just too hard to do the show. And then I got sick, so I was going to fly on Monday back, and I pushed my flight to Wednesday, and I'm still sick, but at least, I'm feeling better enough to do this. Magical. Hope you're feeling better. Please do a recap. All right, I'll do my recap. I'll end with the recap because we haven't done those in a while. And there's a decent amount of news today, so the recap shouldn't be too much. All right, let me do the recap, and then we'll call it quits, guys. I answered the Civil War question. I talked about it at length about 10 or 15 minutes ago, actually. All right, it is day 663 of Putin's 3-day special military operation in Ukraine. U.S. aid is still in limbo. The military in Ukraine is proposing to mobilize 450,000 to 500,000 new soldiers. Excuse me. Politico says that the Ukraine spy agency is talking about intensifying its intelligence operations about Russia, not giving any details, but saying, basically the best is yet to come. Ukraine plans to produce 1 million first-person view drones next year, which is very helpful. The Russians, though, are producing probably more, which is not good. Japan is making several Patriot missiles, possibly systems, available to the U.S. that they'll be sending back. Thank you, Brendy, for that. I appreciate that. That they're sending back to the U.S., which hopefully will make them available for the U.S. to send to Ukraine. In other words, be able to get more systems to Ukraine that way. Ukraine claims to have downed more than 3/4 of the combat drones launched by Russia in the last 10 months or so. Not 10, 13, 14 months or so. But they've only knocked down about 20% of the missiles from Russia. Germany, thank you, Jennifer. Germany announces 88 million euros, which is around the same in dollars, in winter aid for Ukraine. Finland announced $116 million. The Russian invasion of Ukraine is not a war, according to Hungarian wannabe dictator Orban. He says it's a military operation. He's trying to parrot Putin. The question is why, of course. Medical cannabis, finally, the Ukrainian government, the legislature passed legislation legalizing medical cannabis, so cannabis for medical research, for people with cancer, for pain relief, people with post-traumatic stress, which would be basically soldiers. But it does not legalize recreational marijuana. Supposedly, and thank you there. It was at Tarad. Thank you. Supposedly, the law will come into effect in 6 months from now. So hopefully that's true. Israel, the White House says that Israel has acknowledged the need to transition to lower intensity military campaigning in Gaza. I didn't mention this earlier, but, acknowledging doesn't really mean anything. Are they going to do it? Right. But saying that they've acknowledged it means whatever. U.S. Secretary of State Blinken also called out other countries for refusing to call on Hamas to surrender. That basically they criticize Israel's actions, but not Hamas's. I hit a little more news here. Where is this? 1 minute here. Yep, I got that. Where is this? Oops. Wait, I'm missing something here. 3, 4. There it is. It's upside down. There were fresh exchanges of fire between the Israeli military and Hezbollah in the north along Lebanon and Israel, not turning into a full-fledged war yet, but we worry about that. Hamas turned down Israel's new ceasefire proposal, which was pretty much the same ceasefire proposal they had before that Hamas broke. That was, start turning over hostages and prisoners, and we'll stop blowing you up. This time Hamas says no, unless Israel just gives up entirely and says we're no longer fighting. Hamas, go get away with it. It's fine. You attacked us. Hamas isn't willing to have a ceasefire anymore. And I'm sure everyone demanding a ceasefire will turn their ire now to Hamas, since Israel proposed one and Hamas said no. CNN reports that Israel and Cyprus have come a step closer to agreeing on a maritime corridor to let aid come in via the sea. And finally, the Palestinian Center for Policy and Survey Research found that 72% of Palestinians support Hamas's decision to invade Israel on October 7th. And even though 80% of Palestinians say killing women and children in their homes is a war crime, which is what Hamas did, 85% of Palestinians say they have not watched videos shown by international news outlets of acts committed by Hamas. So only 10% think Hamas has committed war crimes, because 85% didn't bother educating themselves on what Hamas actually did, even though they're defending Hamas and even though they voted for Hamas. By the way, since I know this upsets people like this Ash person who's upset now, that is the fourth poll now in the last 2 months from Palestinian sources, from Arab sources in the Middle East, saying that the Palestinians support Hamas in the 70%, not support Hamas, support the invasion, Hamas's attack on Israel in the 70 percentile range. So, you know, as I said, and I'll conclude with this, there's a problem on both sides, folks. You may not like Israel, but I got news for you. The other guys are not the peace, love, and understanding people you think they are. And for everybody on the far left who thinks they're your brothers, you wait and see how well your brothers care about the issues you care about, because I got news for you. I Googled the other day. I'm going to leave it at this, but I Googled the other day, CAIR, C-A-I-R, which is the top Islamic group here in America. Thank you, Super Hornet, that defends, civil rights of Arabs and Muslims in the U.S. I Googled around their site for any mention of gay or LGBT, thinking maybe they're our sister organization, right? Remember, all the groups on the left have embraced the Palestinians as another sister. And I'm thinking, well, these groups on the left are defending the Palestinians. The Palestinian groups must have joined us too, right? No, the only mention you'll find of gay or LGBT on the top Arab civil rights site in the United States are press releases defending the religious right effort to ban books in schools across America that are pro-LGBT. That's it. That's the only mention you're going to find of gays, for example, or trans or anybody else, in the Palestinian civil rights website. The top group in America is them supporting the religious right in attacking gays and trans people. So doesn't mean you blow them up, but I got news for you. These people are not your friends. So I'll sort of end on this point because I've said it before. I would be much more comfortable if people on the left, especially in America, would just admit the truth and say, you know what? We're defending the religious right. We don't think the religious right should be bombed and killed. Totally valid argument to make, but don't pretend. And you are defending the religious right. You're defending the Islamic right. You're defending people who hate gays. They're bad on women. They certainly hate gays and trans, and they're bad on pretty much every issue you care about as a lefty. Admit that you're defending a religious right radical, and I'm fine. But stop pretending like you're defending our longtime friends, because these folks hate us. At least they hate our values. They certainly hate our political values if you're a lefty. That's for sure. So, just a reminder. And yes, I didn't mention it. There was a shooting in Prague today, really bad, a mass shooting in Prague, the Czech Republic today, very akin to the kind of thing that happens in the U.S. I didn't really want to report on it because it's not relevant. I mean, to us discussing here, although it is international news. Thank you, McCobb. I'll be curious to see sort of tomorrow what more of the story is, I didn't see that it was caused by any conflict about what was going on in the Middle East or whatever, but bad. I mean, it's the kind of thing that happens here every day. I hope that doesn't pick up more. University. Yeah. Classic for what they do here. I just hope that isn't the kind of thing that picks up more in Europe by a student. Exactly the kind of crap that they do here. How they'd even get a gun in Prague. I talked about the Houthis earlier, Stooge. You may have missed it. We had a good talk about them. But yeah, I'm not sure. Inspired by attacks in Russia? What does that mean? I don't even know what that means. Inspired by attacks in Russia. I don't even know what that means. Weird. Very weird. Do I answer DMs? Yeah, if you can. I don't know that you can DM me on Twitter, on text. I mean, on here. You can try. You can try. I just have to cut things back a little because otherwise I get every crazy person messaging. So it may not be easy for you to message, but if I can see it, I'll respond. All right, guys, I'm gonna get going. All right. I will see you all tomorrow. I made it through pretty good, but I'm still exhausted from this cold. But I'll see you guys tomorrow night. I'm every night. Remember, 6:00 Eastern time, US. That's 6:00 Washington D.C. or New York City time. And I will keep continuing the news from Israel and from Ukraine and other big American news as we see fit. Yeah, tomorrow. Yeah, we're already getting towards Christmas, and I'll do tomorrow. Christmas Day, I'm not going to do one, but we'll do tomorrow, and then Saturday we'll still do our Saturday show. I didn't do one last week because I was on vacation. How much APAC money do you get? None, but the money I do get to support my work is from you guys. So if you like my work and you don't like people like that, you need to donate. Okay? You need to donate if you don't like people like that. Like you can click right now on TikTok and do one of those gifts. You could even just go to my profile and become a subscriber on TikTok, which means a monthly donation, or go to my profile, click the Linktree link on TikTok or the aravosis.com link for you guys, and it'll give you all of my links, my PayPal, my LinkedIn, my PayPal, my Venmo, my Cash App, and you can just donate that way too. So if you don't like these people who are APAC shill, that's, by the way, a nice way of him calling me a Jew, by the way. I had somebody, by the way, in the airport last night in Chicago who I'm convinced did that. Some woman got pissed at me for some weird reason. Basically, she was in the way, blocking all the traffic. Nobody could get through in the airport. The entire airport area was blocked by this woman and these people. And everyone was afraid to say anything. And finally I said, excuse me. I said, excuse me, could you move, please? We're trying to get through. I said like that. She got very upset and she turns to me and she goes, Mr. Euro. And I went, Mr. Euro. I literally looked at her like, thank you, Michelle. I was like, Mr. Euro? By the way, is this like something or was she crazy? I wanted to be like, we don't say that in America, Mr. Euro. Like what? And I'm wearing blue jeans, blue jeans and like a down American. I don't know, Mr. Euro. And I didn't think about it until I got into the car, but I kind of wanted to say, do you mean Jew? Like I should have just thrown that at her. Like, what are you actually saying, Mr. Euro? Or was she saying Europeans were rude? Like, anyway, I told my nephew when I got it, I didn't have my fancy sweater on. I wear my fancy sweater for you guys. I had you guys have seen it before, my kind of pink and red. It's like, it's not really pink though. My plaid shirt. It was a plaid shirt, blue jeans, shirt out. And my, not North Slope. It's, Land's End or one of those places. My regular black down jacket. I was looking like a Chicagoan just arriving from Phoenix. Mr. Euro. Mr. Euro. Oh my God. Unbelievable. Yes. But Europeans, it depends who. It was North Face or one of them. It wasn't North Face. It was Land's End, I think. It was one of the ones from up there in Maine. It's the one from in Maine. Is Land's End Maine? It's the one in Maine I got it from. Well, if it's the hair, we know exactly what she meant if it's the hair. Because the hair only means one thing to people who don't like me. They accuse me of being Jewish. Always. Yeah. LL Bean. Oh, it was LL Bean then. It wasn't Land's End. Yeah, it was LL Bean. That's my jacket. Yeah. I bought it I love it. 20 years ago, I got it in it's still hanging in there. It's a great jacket. Well, no, it's not my LL Bean. It's a different, it is LL Bean though. Yeah. Anyway, oh my God, Mr. Euro. Mr. Euro. I was just like, yeah, that's not a thing. Mr. Euro. All right, guys. Oh, thank you, Zell, for the gift. All right, guys. I'm gonna go so I can try to relax here. Oh my God, I've been taking zinc too. Nothing's helping, but what do you do? I'll get better. I'll get better eventually. All right. All right. COINTELPRO. What does that even mean? You got to use words I understand or they're not insults. See, okay, I'll leave you with this bit of wisdom. If you're going to insult someone in English, first of all, speak English, speak it correctly, and use words that are actually used in English. If you're going to insult somebody in English, otherwise, it doesn't help. Mr. Europe. Exactly, Matan. Thank you. Anyway. All right, guys, a Mr. Euro shirt. I know. I really do like this could be a whole sort of thing for me selling stuff. Mr. Euro. Does that mean she thought I was hot? That would be kind of funny. Like, ma'am, please don't flirt with me. Like in retrospect, I can now think of all the things I could have said to her. Mr. Euro, ma'am, please don't flirt with me. Oh my. Anyway. All right, guys, I'm going to go. Like I said, I really don't feel great. And this takes a lot of energy to do anyway. So hopefully I'll be feeling better than I just have a cold. I've had a cold for over a week now and it's driving me crazy. And it's not COVID. I tested again today. It's not COVID. So it's just a cold, but it's just, it's just enough here that you feel tired, and I'm sick of it. All right. I'll see you guys. Thank you for the gifts and the welcome back, folks. I'll see you all tomorrow. So Saturday, Saturday morning, 11 a.m. Central Time. So that's noon Eastern time US. I will be doing my coffee talk again for the paid subscribers, the paid monthly subscribers on TikTok, and all the other paid monthly subscribers on YouTube, Ko-fi, Twitch, Discord. Those guys will be meeting on Discord, the paid monthly on TikTok. I'll see you guys on TikTok, 11 a.m. Chicago time, noon Washington, D.C. time. Okay? Exactly. And happy solstice for those who celebrate. All right. Bye, guys. Thank you.